So we must do two things, two great things together to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself.
Well, why do we pray at all? Why do people pray? What is the attraction for prayer? What attracts us to pray? What attracts anyone to pray? I think when we look into that question, we find really that all peoples, all individuals who have ever prayed have had some kind of a sense that there is a divine cyberneter, some touch within us that makes us pray has to do with sensing that there is a divine cyberneter. They call it God, we call it God, and yet it is the appeal, really, to something that can come and guide us, that can lead us, that can steer us in the right direction, that can lead us along a course of action that will answer our questions, solve our problems, meet our desires. And actually we know from our work together in the science of being that there is indeed a divine cyberneter, a spiritual principle, a divine principle, the love principle, which is able to answer every prayer, answer true desire. But this principle, as science teaches us, requires an attitude of us that is itself divinely cybernetic. Our attitude toward this cybernetic divine principle must be formed into a cybernetic attitude. That only this can be heard, recognized by the divine principle, recognized really through the identity principle, that only like can recognize like. And so it is this divine cybernetic attitude within us that will enable us to be one with the divine cybernetic principle, to have identity with the divine cybernetic principle. And therefore, she says of Jesus' prayer, which was the ideal cybernetic prayer, the ideal cybernetic attitude, that this prayer was a prayer of soul, a prayer of perfect accord or coincidence with the self-organizing principle, and a prayer expressing the perfect cybernetic standpoint within consciousness, a perfect cybernetic standpoint of the Word as the Word, This is a divinely cybernetic prayer. And so the prayer that we look at this week is the prayer. It is the divine cybernetic prayer. And we perhaps in that way look at it quite differently than we ever have before. So let us begin. Actually, I want to begin taking the first few items in your questionnaire because they are so basic and so fundamental to the whole tone of prayer. They are those questions and issues which are bringing to light the main tone within the chapter prayer. And that main tone is brought to our attention through the very first scriptural note in the text. That in this very first scriptural note, we see that thought passes through 3 stages. And we can ask ourselves, what are these 3 stages? They have to do with the cybernetic attitude within us. So let's look at that first scriptural note, and I will read it all the way through for you, and then we will go back and analyze it. For verily I say unto you, this is Jesus speaking, Jesus conveying really what the cybernetic attitude is within us of a true prayer. Verily I say unto you that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire when ye pray, he's recapping it now, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Can you hear 3 stages in actually 3 stages 2 times, because he presents the cybernetic attitude within us, and then he recaps it again. Actually, what is presented are the tones of mind, spirit, and soul. Mind, spirit, and soul. 3 steps that depict our inward attitude, the attitude with which we truly pray. So let's go over it again. For verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say to this mountain, see, whosoever shall say to this calculus, this false calculus, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea. This is mind. This is whosoever shall be in accord with the will of mind. If we are in accord with that divine will of mind to have that calculus, that false calculation removed, and will take the stand of mind, the desire of mind, the power of mind to address that issue, to be in accord with the will of mind. And then he goes on, and shall not doubt in his heart, shall not doubt, but shall have the firmness of spirit, right? The firmness of spirit, believing believing that those things which he says shall come to pass, and you have to know that when the Bible speaks of believing at this point, or as Jesus would use the term believing, it is really to understand. That shall not doubt in his heart, but shall understand that those things which he saith shall come to pass. This is spirit. He shall have whatsoever he saith. Soul. Mind, spirit, soul. And then he recaps it. Mind. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire when ye pray. Spirit. Believe that ye receive them. Soul. And ye shall have them. Can you hear that? Mind, spirit, and soul. The divine will within us in accord with the will of mind. Whatever in us is in accord with the will of mind and is firm in that standpoint, has the firmness of spirit within it, will come to the point of soul, to the definiteness of soul, where we have that with which we have been firm. So it is, so to say, the desire for the new light of mind, the desire for the wisdom of mind, for the intelligence of mind, the desire to see that which mind is presenting that is new to us, the firmness in that, where we put everything into that. Just as you've done this week, you've come with the desire to have the new light of mind. Isn't that what brings us to every occasion, every event of this sort? The desire to see that new light. And what do we give further to that desire? Our best qualities, our greatest good, that we put everything into it with the earnestness of spirit, with the firmness of spirit, with the qualities of spirit, that you bring your spiritual qualities, your best qualities to it. And what happens by sticking to that, by sticking to mind and spirit, that's actually the rule of soul. To stick to mind and spirit, something happens. You realize that new vision. You realize a new vision. It's also the relationship of the first day, the light of mind of the first day. What happens in the second day? We have to keep that light pure. We have to set it apart, not mix it up with anything, to have the firmament of spirit, that we don't mix that light up with other so-called information, but we keep it pure. And as we keep it pure, we find that the dry land appears, that something definite begins to crystallize within consciousness. So these three stages, and we will enlarge upon them. This is just the first touch of them as they appear in the first scriptural note. And in the morning we will take the second scriptural note, and then the whole thing will look different to us, but we take it this evening in its order as it appears in the first scriptural note, depicting the three stages that permeate the whole chapter. They go through the whole chapter, and they are depicted throughout the chapter in both a positive sense and in a negative sense. Just briefly, how are these three stages depicted in a positive sense? That the text would tell us that prayer is a desire, that prayer is mental, that prayer is unspoken, that we must ask aright and desire aright, that this prayer must be as Spirit substantiated. You hear the substance of Spirit, that we must put the substance of Spirit in it, and not just have the words, but the substance of Spirit expressing spiritual qualities, struggling, striving. These are spiritual attributes and qualities within us to struggle towards, that is, to go towards, to move towards the goal, to go in the direction of the goal. This is what is meant by striving toward that goal, toward perfection. And that's the believing firmly, you see, the moving always in the direction of understanding, of more and more understanding through the expression of spiritual qualities. And finally, as soul, that prayer is assured of its answer when the object of prayer is to understand God. So that which happens, soul always has to do with something happening. You have the desire of mind, and you keep that desire pure, and you put everything into that desire. That's mind and spirit. And as you stay with mind and spirit, see mind and spirit become a loop, a cybernetic loop. But it isn't a loop that doesn't go anywhere. As you stay in that loop, something happens, and that's soul. So something begins to become definite in you, to take form in you. The dry land appears in consciousness. And that which is appearing in consciousness is what? It is really that prayer is assured of its answer. To be assured is a soul sense that we are assured of our answer to prayer when it is of the nature of understanding God, when our prayer is directed to one object, to the understanding of God. How are these three stages counterfeited in the text as a wrong sense of prayer? Well, as the counterfeit of mind, it's the mere request, just to have a mere request, to have only words. As the counterfeit of spirit, it's that which is superficial. You see, not substantiated, but superficial, empty. And as soul, it is that which resides in belief, in material sense, in emotion. All of that is the opposite of the true attitude of mind, spirit, and soul. Because what we actually see are, as mind, spirit, and soul, those stages which belong to a dynamic, evolving consciousness. Dynamic, spiritually evolving consciousness. And what we see as the counterfeit of mind, spirit, and soul are those stages which are tending toward equilibrium. So that the depiction of a right prayer in the text, if we go through the text as a whole, and selectively. When you go selectively through the text and you extract from the text those constituents which belong to a right prayer, you are looking at that which constitutes the open system within us, the openness within us. Now, didn't we talk about openness and closedness? That there is a right sense of being open and a wrong sense of being open, a right sense of being closed, and a wrong sense of being closed. But what we find here, as we read selectively first for everything that constitutes a right prayer, and then everything that constitutes a wrong prayer, what we actually find is what constitutes our true openness. And what we find is that we are already of the nature of openness. That there is much within us that is open, an open system, that we are an open system, and this is that which is correct within us, and already of the divine nature within us, and it is that will be amplified within us. Amplified by what? By the positive feedback circuit. Okay.